Surprise!
Surprise! I'm Shannon.
I'm Alexis, and for those of you who know us personally, this was a long time coming.
For those of you who don't, well, nice to meet you and we're happy you're here.
We're here to announce something new and exciting. Our new podcast, Get Stiff. Stiff talk, stiff drinks, coming soon.
Get Stiff is a podcast where we have conversations about death, grief, loss, and everything in between over cocktails. We pair a themed cocktail with each episode and share the recipe with our listeners.
That's right, we get tipsy and have hard conversations.
We talked about a lot of different ways we wanted to announce the show, and we thought nothing could be more perfect than sharing a few scary stories, both of our own and ones we found online. So, without further ado, submitted for the approval of the Midnight Society. I'm kidding. Nickelodeon, please don't sue us.
I call this first story, The Man in the Mortuary. So, I was working a late night service at the mortuary at the time. You know the one, we won't name any names, right, Shannon? Yeah. So anyways, how it usually would work is that we have what are called funeral attendants who would come and work the services with us, but they would come just for the service, and then they're supposed to stay until the service is over and then help you close down the mortuary and then leave. Now, as Shannon knows, funeral attendants hardly ever, at least at this specific mortuary, do that. So we had a service that was going on. The funeral attendants leave me all by my lonesome, and this is a night service, so at this time it's probably, 9, 10 o'clock at night. So I'm by myself, walking around the mortuary, closing things down, and I go into the chapel where we had the funeral service, and I was closing things down. Now, if you're not familiar with our typical protocol, we have different sets of lights, right, Shannon? So we have the casket lights that are right above the casket, and the ones to be able to turn those off, they're actually behind this little hidden pillar that's behind the casket so that no one can see it. So I go to the front of the chapel to turn off those lights, turning those off, closing the casket, walking around, checking things, checking for Kleenex, checking things, making sure everything's okay. So then I go to the actual, is it the back or the front? Well, whatever, the back of the chapel to turn around and actually turn off the lights that turn off the rest of the lights that are in the chapel. So I turn those lights off and I make one last sweeping look just to make sure everything is okay. And then I see a man sitting in one of the pews. Why is that funny?
Because I remember this day.
Anyway, you remember? Oh my gosh. So in my mind, right, for some reason, it didn't go. My mind is oh no, oh shit, this person who maybe was in the restroom at the time when maybe this is a part of the family, maybe he slipped in through the side. You know, we have a bunch of doors in mortuaries, and if you don't know, we have a bunch of doors in mortuaries. There's side doors, there are front doors, and there are back doors, which we use for different things, we'll say. So anyways, I see this guy sitting in one of the pews, and I'm oh shit, I'm so sorry. So I call out to him and I'm oh, hello, sorry, didn't see you there. This person slowly turns to the side, he's acknowledging my existence. He knows that I am there. Doesn't turn around, doesn't look at me, doesn't nothing. Slowly turns. I see his side profile and then turns back to the front. So I'm okay, well, maybe he just doesn't want to be disturbed. Maybe he just wanted to have his alone time. So I go to walk out to the chapel to give this man alone time. I start to walk, and then I turn around just one last time to check the chapel, and he's gone. Completely just vanishes. So in my mind, I'm okay, well, there's no way this man got up that damn fast. So then I'm okay, that was weird. I turn back to the doors, and the lights in the chapel completely go black. Whole entire thing, pitch black, midnight. Keep in mind, I am by myself in this mortuary, 10 o'clock at night, pitch black darkness in this chapel of this mysterious being that just popped out of nowhere. So I'm okay, like somebody, some spirit is messing with me. Like, I don't know who this man was, who he was. Maybe he was trying to pay his respects to this person, but he's messing with me. Like,
Maybe
I
he
don't know what
was
I
that
did, but he's
person.
messing with me. So
Did he look like the person that was in the casket?
no, no, the deceased was actually a woman. So don't think, don't think. Well, maybe in a different form.
Maybe.
I don't know, but that is one of the most memorable things I can remember because I just remember that feeling in the moment where I'm like, oh shit, like, did I make a mistake? Was someone in the bathroom and I didn't see them? Did this person, like, my mind immediately is going to, oh shit, like, I hope I didn't rid this person of their chance to say their final goodbyes and things like that. And it wasn't even, I don't, maybe he was in a way saying his final goodbye in some sense, but it just tripped me out. And I remember telling you, Miss Shannon, like right after it happened, because I was just like, I just had the weirdest, like, I don't know if this spirit is just messing with me or like what is going on. But that, I always remember that story because I feel like so often when people find out we work in the funeral industry, what do people ask us? Have you ever seen anything? Yep. Have you heard anything? Do you feel things? Can you sense things? So that's the story that I will usually tell people because it like trips people out, just as it tripped me out because I've seen a lot of shit, but that one for me like just really
I
really
think you
messed with
called me
me.
on the way home when that happened. I want to say you
I
called me when you were
did.
driving home. And that particular
I
funeral
did.
home, there were a lot of things that lived in that funeral home. And I think a lot of
Oh, for
them
sure.
were not happy. Do you remember? So,
Which I mean,
do you remember the basement downstairs?
mhm.
So this is and just
Oh
this is
yeah.
not even really a story, but I remember when I started at this funeral home and Alexis was saying there's a basement downstairs. And I'm like, okay, I want to go see the basement. I want to go see the basement. And that's where they keep a lot of the files. So we go downstairs and there's this hallway, very like short little like vestibule type area. There's one door that goes to the right, which is where the file room is, all these files. And there's a door that goes to the left. And on the left, there is I couldn't tell you what's inside that room. I don't know because I don't play with spirits. But I saw a crucifix that was taped to the door, taped over and over and over, that looked years old, that said, and there was just a note that's also taped to the door under the crucifix that says, "Do not open." So I did not open because it was very much giving in the jungle, you must wait till the dice read 5 or 8. And I just don't play those types of games. I won't play Jumanji. I'm not doing it. And I remember we asked, there was another funeral director who had been there for forever. He'd been there, I think he's since retired now. We won't share his name, but we'll call him Jeffrey. Just hilarious if you know his actual name.
Oh
We'll
yeah,
call him Jeffrey.
Jeffrey.
And we asked him, hey, like, how long has that been there? Like, what's in that room? And he said, what did he say, Alexis?
I don't remember.
I think he said, I don't know. It was there when I got here. That is
Oh,
what he
that sounds
told
like
us.
something Jeffrey would say.
He said, I don't know. It was there when I got here. I don't know if he was playing with me. I mean, maybe. But the tape looked old. The note looked old. And your girl wasn't having it. We just weren't playing those games. But
You see, I would have been the one potentially, but
and you're the
I was curious.
scariest one. You love playing with
I'm
these
not.
spirits. What are you gonna do if you conjure something that you cannot control?
How do we know that it's a negative being that's there? Just because
How do
someone
you
mounts a
know that
crucifix on
it's not?
something,
How do you know that it's not? Is my
what if
point.
they're trapped there by that's an old ass mortuary and maybe the spirits have been harnessed there by some evil thing that kept
No,
them there
baby, get
and
somebody
we
else
are
to do it.
responsible for releasing them.
Get somebody
I'm just
else to
saying,
do
I
it.
didn't do it, obviously, but I will won't lie because every single day when I would go down to that basement, when I have to find an old file, I cannot say that I was not tempted to take a peek as to what was inside because it's like, who's not going to want to look inside?
Me,
I was so curious. I
me.
feel like said person though partially maybe had some stuff in there that he wasn't supposed to have in there and just didn't want us going in there. That's just my opinion.
Still none of my business. I've learned to mind the business that pays me, and that was just not the type of spiritual warfare I was looking for that day. They did
I'm just
not pay
curious.
enough.
Maybe that was the man who I saw in the chapel, something to do with him, and now I'll never know.
Now you'll never know. And I'm fine with
Now I'll
that.
never know.
I am fine with
I'm
never
not. I'm
knowing.
curious. I'm curious. I gotta know.
Well,
What?
well. Moving on to our next story. Something that, if you've been rocking with I Do Death since day one, you might be familiar with this one, but I thought it was an appropriate time to bring back an oldie but a goodie. So I call this one Charlie.
Ah, Charlie.
Even if they aren't religious, most funeral directors tend to be a bit spiritual. At the very least, we believe in ghosts. Not the sheets with holes for eyes type ghosts, although also very scary, but something completely different altogether. We've sat around the table at happy hours, parties, and the like, debating on what the source of the strange noises and unexplained happenings could possibly be, but from this funeral director's perspective, the answer is almost always ghosts. It's spirits, and I'm not here for it. I was working in a mortuary years ago that was originally once one of California's landmarks. The building had a lot of history, which, in mortuary terms, meant it was haunted. And only a matter of time before something creepy happened. Like most mortuary employees with less than 5 years under the belt at the time, I was skeptical, writing off the stories I'd heard as the veterans' attempts to scare me. And then I met Charlie. Charlie was 17 years old, and he'd ended his own life in Georgia. His parents had shipped his body back to California for burial. And from the moment that the casket arrived in our prep room, I felt something was wrong. After opening the casket to ID him, I felt a chill run down my spine. His hair was jet black like squid's ink, and his skin was porcelain. His eyelashes were so blonde they were almost transparent. And I closed the casket, thought nothing of it, and went back into the office. So like Alexis said, it's not uncommon for funeral directors to be in the mortuary long after business hours, to catch up on paperwork, for visitations, to clean up. But I was there, closing up for the evening, and then I heard it. It sounded like someone was just knocking things over in the prep room. So I went back to the hallway and entered the access code and went in. Nothing was out of place. Nothing was on the floor. In fact, everything was perfect. I shrugged it off and went to shut the lights off again. And then I heard it again. This isn't funny, I thought to myself. Believing that someone was playing a joke on me, I went back into the prep room. And again, everything was just as it should be, in its place, except for one tiny but important detail. The casket was open. Now, I wish this were the part where I told you that I engaged in full-out battle against the dead, tackling him and making sure he was back in his casket, but I'm not a liar, so I'm just not going to do that. I would even be satisfied to say that one of my coworkers had snuck in through the back to prank me, but that would also be a lie. The truth is, I got the hell out of there. I left the lights on, I got in my car, and I drove away. I worked in a sistering location until he was buried, and his case was completely closed because, unlike Alexis and her curiosity, this bitch is going to make it to the end of the horror movie.
Oh my God. First of all, this curiosity has gotten me very far in life. Okay, I would not have done as much if I didn't have this morbid little curiosity within me. Okay, it works very well in our industry, I would say, for the most part, when I'm not fighting off open caskets and things, and seeing ghosts in chapels. You know what? Whatever. I apologize for nothing. Okay. But I mean, it's spooky stuff doesn't just happen in the mortuary. I've also had my fair share of stuff happen when I was working at the medical examiner. Did I ever tell you about that story, Shannon?
I don't think so.
So, one lovely stormy day, as the stories usually start, right? I was an autopsy tech at the medical examiner, the county medical examiner for a big major city. I won't say the one. Anyways, it was a very stormy day, and one of the pathologists had asked me to go to the cooler to get the next case that we were going to be working on, which they always did that. So I made my way to the cooler. Keep in mind, our cooler probably at this point had at least 200, 300 bodies that we just kept there pretty much at all times. Part of it was for a medical school that was also like in partnership with us. So we stored their bodies. Anyways, lots of bodies, lots of bodies. So I go there looking for our case. I'm looking around, like trying to find the specific person. All of a sudden, lights completely go out. Pitch black darkness. The power goes out. Now, everything at the medical examiner I worked at was electronic, meaning the door to the cooler was not going to work. Right. So I am stuck inside on a stormy day with hundreds of bodies. I'm in the middle pretty much of the cooler. So I'm surrounded at this point by bodies. So at this point, I'm like, okay, if I see anything, I can't see, it's pitch black. I'm like, if I hear anything, if I feel anything, what am I going to, like, where am I going to? I cannot see where I'm going. If I try to run somewhere, I'm going to knock over or knock into at least 10 bodies. So I'm standing in the middle of this cooler surrounded by bodies. No one else is in there with a pulse. And all of a sudden, I feel this swift breeze by me. So I'm like, fuck my life. What do I do? Where do I go? And at this point, it's been like 10 seconds. And I'm like, oh, we have a backup generator. Shouldn't this be like coming on now? Like something should be happening. No. So I'm like, okay, start slowly edging towards the door. Door's not going to open because obviously the electricity's out. But I start making my way towards the door. Then I feel it again, this huge gust of air. And I'm like, okay, so I say out and I'm like, I don't know who you are. I'm just trying to help, do my job. I don't sense any bad energy, but I just want you to know I'm here to help. And all of a sudden, the backup generator kicks in and part of the lights come back on. And I'm standing in the middle, pretty much, of this cooler. I haven't touched anything at this point yet because I hadn't had the chance to move anything. And all of the shelving containing the bodies, part of it was like moved out. Now, it was not like that when I went in there. Everyone was in their respective places. But this one, I don't know, want to say drawer, but this one section was completely pulled out. Now, we had about 4 bodies stacked up, probably about 150 pounds, 200 pounds each, all of a sudden just pulled out. So, weird stuff happening all the time, whether in the mortuary, whether in the cemetery, whether at the medical examiner, but I'm here for it. Like, as long as it's not a negative entity and it's not, I don't feel like the harm, then I'm perfectly fine with like, hey, let your presence be known. I like it. But I know you don't feel that way, Shannon.
Keep it. You can keep it.
But isn't it
I
kind of
don't
cool?
want it.
Don't you think
No.
it's kind of cool? No?
No.
I think it's
No.
amazing.
No. Absolutely not.
As long as it's not
Absolutely
bad and not
not.
harmful, then like,
The thing
why?
is, Alexis, you know what you sound like? You sound like all of those ridiculous horror movies that are like, oh, it's just a little girl that needs help going to where she needs to go. That is how they always start. That's how they come to you. Do you think any demon's going to come to you and be like, hey, I'm a demon. I want to inflict chaos. Aren't you like, aren't you excited to help me now? Like, aren't you motivated to help me now with my
First of
obviously
all,
nefarious intentions? No, they're always going to come to you soft and sweet and playful. And no, I just need help. And then you invite them in and all hell breaks loose. You can't
no.
keep it. You
Not
can't
every
keep
spirit is a
it.
demon with
I don't
ill intentions, let me
want
just
it.
say. Sometimes
I'm
people just
not
want to make
saying
their
that.
presence known, and I feel like all of the interactions that I've had, speaking personally, I have never felt that bad energy shift. Now, would it change had I felt that if I were like in some old haunted indigenous burial ground? Absolutely. But as far as like all the scenarios that I've been in, I've never felt unsafe.
You
So
can keep it.
I like
See,
it.
but that brings me to cases when, just in general, when you lose someone and when people say, like, I remember when like Matt passed away, how people would say, "Oh, I'm going to pray for him to come visit you." I said, "Why would you do that? I don't know. I don't want, you clearly don't know me that well. I don't want
Do
that."
not remember when Matt did come and visit us though when we were watching Disney movies?
So, okay.
You gotta tell
And we're not gonna, no, we're not gonna share that story. Maybe for another day. That might be for
because
the
it's true
Patreon.
though.
But I will say this. So I grew up in the church, and I'm not super devout, I guess is the word I would use. I haven't been practicing in a while, but I do have very strong beliefs and faith in that regard. And I also believe that if you believe in, God or, heaven or whatever, like your ancestors guiding you, or whatever omnipresent spirit, being, vibes, the universe, whatever is guiding you, if you believe in that, then you have to believe that there is like, to every yin there's a yang, right? So if there is something good and good positive energy, there are negative things and negative energy that's in
There
there.
are.
And so when they attack, it's when you are at your most emotionally or spiritually vulnerable. And times like that can be when you've experienced a deep loss. So I've always I remember one of my aunts telling me, spiritually keep your guard up during this time, because this is when, you're tried. And I remember, so even things like that, my first thought was never like, "Ooh, Matt's coming to visit," because he knew me and he knew that I would not want that. Do not come visit me. Do not pop up in the corner. No, no, no. If you know me well enough, you know not to do that, which means that ain't him. That's not who that is, in my opinion. But again, that being said, I've always, like, and when you grow up in a Creole family the way that I did as well, you've taught very young. I think with the stories that my grandmothers have told me, my aunts have told me, my uncles and things like that, you learn very early not to play with that type of thing if you don't know what you're doing. And I just, even in the funeral homes, I think of all the things I've seen. And again, going back to the one that we used to work in, where we would see people kind of running past us, like the flash of a jacket, or you would like hear children laughing, or like you'd hear like people running back and forth, and you wouldn't actually see anything, but it was always a whisper of something. And I remember something stood out to me that my grandmother told me years and years ago. And both my grandmothers are now deceased, but they told me years ago, if you ever hear someone whisper your name, like you're not quite sure who called you, you don't answer. If it's actually someone that's on this side of the veil, they'll call you again. Kind of like, think about your mom. Like, if she's like, "Hey, Alexis, come here," and you don't answer, she's going to say, "Alexis, come here," right? Or something like that. She's going to call you again. Whereas if you just hear, "Alexis," and you're not quite sure where it came from, that was creepy, wasn't it?
That was a really creepy.
You're not quite sure where it came from.
What is going on?
You don't want to, the more energy you give things, the stronger it gets. So this is my very long way of saying that if you don't know that something is good or bad from, the beginning, even entertaining it is making it stronger. You're making it stronger. You're giving it more power. You're giving it more presence. And I'm sure there's a lot of, woo-woo honeys and like Instagram witches are going to have things to say about this. And that's fine, girl. Argue with your mama. I don't care. But as for me and my house that shepherds the dead each and every day, we will stay on this side of the veil and respectfully shepherd people where they need to go.
Yeah, I think we were raised really different. I was raised by a hippie mom where everything is a sign. So, I mean, it could be a drizzle of a specific raindrop that hits my windshield at just the right time, and my mom was like, "Oh my God, it was meant for you to do this." So as far as that goes, and like my mom actually her dad recently died, and she's been having not a lot of communication, but just kind of reminiscence and things with him. So I think it depends. My mom very much raised me in the sense of, if you're open to, like, some people are just naturally more susceptible to receiving messages from the other side. And that was something that I grew up with, like not being afraid, I think was the biggest thing, but being cautious, of course, and energetically keeping that, my mom calls it a white light, protection light around you, especially when you are working in such heavy, like, you know, jobs and you're really surrounded by a lot of people's energy. And that's living people energy. Grief is very, very
Mm-hmm.
heavy. Always need to have a kind of protection around you spiritually. And that's something that my mom really instilled in me. So I think I just have a different kind of mindset when it comes to these things. I'm not afraid of them. I'm not naive to the fact that it could potentially be something that is not the nicest entity or someone who is negative, but I try not to automatically assume that. And I come at it with like, okay, this person maybe just wants to make their presence known. That's kind of my first thought before I get into this may be potentially, like a negative
Mm-hmm.
spirit. So, but that's just a
Oh,
product. I'm a
absolutely.
byproduct of my witchy hippie mama. God bless
She's the
Gia.
best. God bless Gia.
But even say everything is a sign, and she has this medium who she works with. Well, she wouldn't say medium. She'd say an energy worker who she works with, who has always said that, like, oh, she sees me being the person who just receives messages and such. So I try to keep that
Mm-hmm.
in mind, but I keep that white light up all the time. I may look like I'm darkness and all this all the time, but best believe I have mastered that white
Spooky
light
but
protection
spiritual.
because I need it. Yep, that's me. Spooky and
Spooky but
spiritual.
spiritual. Yes, I'd have to agree with that. There's a lot of same in my family. Everything is a sign, and what's meant for you will come to you, and all of that. And I do think
Hmm.
that things like manifestation and meditation and all of that can coexist with faith and walking
Oh
carefully and
yeah.
kind of towing that line. I do think they can definitely coexist, which we definitely get into a little bit when we talk to Claire, which you guys will see later on in the season. But
Yeah.
yeah, I think I definitely love your approach to that. But them spirits can stay in the funeral home and out of my house, please and thank you.
I mean, my house may look like I have a bunch of spirits here, but not much.
Well, we've shared a couple of our favorite stories. We don't want to give away too much, but we did something fun, and like all shows that are just getting started, we decided to see what the internet had to say. So Alexis and I both picked our favorite horror story from Reddit, and we're going to read them to you.
There were so many good ones though. When Shannon told me that this was like we were potentially going to look into this, I was like, are there going to be a lot of stories, or are people going to have anything to relate? And I was shocked with how many people on Reddit had a story. So I'm impressed. I am impressed.
We tried to stick to ones that came from people who are actually in the funeral industry, because there's always that my buddy's uncle's cousin's baby mama's
Oh
grand roach
God.
saw a body sit up in the back, and it's like, no, girl,
20
no,
years
she didn't.
ago in
No, he
in
didn't.
Alabama or wherever. And it's like, girl, that did not
Yeah.
happen.
There was that one.
Oh God.
Well, there was that one that we did find about them saying that funeral homes open the retort mid cremation and smash the skull. And there were a lot of comments saying how that just couldn't possibly be true. And meanwhile, we're just like, us both having seen that, we're just like,
There's some things though that,
Homer Simpson meme backs into the bushes.
back it up.
What do you mean? Hit it.
All right. First story. It says, mortuary transporter here. So that means she or he or they is someone who helps transport the bodies from wherever the deceased passed away back to the mortuary or to the crematory or to wherever they are going to be held. So just making that known. Nothing too crazy, but making my first after hours drop off by myself. I pull up to the crematory at around 10 p.m., lights are off, and the door alarm is on, so I flip those and bring my two bodies in. I'm weighing them, and then I hear thumps coming from inside the retort oven. I stop what I'm doing and get really still. The ovens are off, and there's just the humming of the fluorescence. I wait like that for 10 seconds, nothing. So I go back to getting the bodies boxed. Then I hear it again, a few muffled bangs from inside the retort. I tell myself one of two things is happening. Either A, the retorts burn hot as shit during the day, 1800 degrees Fahrenheit to be exact. They probably expand and contract as they cool. Or B, there's a fucking grudge demon living in there, and it's gonna scamper up the fucking ceiling and drop on me.
Scamper.
I love that that's where their mind goes. A scamper demon? Like, oh. Oh my God. Okay.
I'm sorry.
I love it though.
I just saw it, just like
You can clearly visualize this. Like the thoughts and the thing is I feel for them because when you are in moments like that, you just start like catastrophizing. You're like, what if it is this? What if it is that? What if it's this?
And you've heard those sounds.
I know
like you know
exactly
what that sound
the sound
is.
that they're
Like
talking about.
You know what it is.
Okay, so it says, I weighed both options in my mind.
I'm sorry.
And decided that if it was a monster, then I was already dead.
Wait, so your options are... Wait, I'm sorry. Your options are normal retort sounds or fucking
no
grudge demon. Scampering grudge demon.
Retort, normal sounds, demon, scampering monster. Those are our only options here, naturally. Okay, so I weighed both options in my mind and decided that if it was a monster, then I was already dead. So best thing to do was get the job over with quickly and efficiently and go the fuck home. Shannon, that sounds like you. The next day, I brought it up with the crematory operator, and he laughed and said it was just them cooling, and that, yeah, it is freaky the first time you hear it. So all in all, it was kind of funny in hindsight, but hearing thumping sounds in the middle of the night in a building that's already filled with dead bodies for about 5 seconds, there was mortal terror. There's been some really gross shit I've seen, but that was the scariest. Oh my God.
That poor woman, which in my mind it's a woman.
That's what I thought at first too. But you know what's funny is I know exactly the sound that they're talking about, and I guess if you're not prepared for it, it would be alarming at 10 o'clock on your first night ever transporting bodies to a crematory.
So I've definitely heard that sound.
I know it. I know exactly.
And you know what? I think I believe it's a woman just because the fact of I'm dead anyway. Let me just get it done and go home. Because when you are, yes, because at the end of the day, I signed on to do a job for these families. I signed on. They trusted me, which I say this a lot, but when you trust a stranger to care for the most important person to you in the world, like that is a hell of a lot of trust. That is a huge responsibility and a huge obligation to that family. So if I have 2 cases in the trunk, you already know me. I'm very in our industry, bodies is an acceptable word and it's fine to say it. I don't ever say that word. I say cases, I say people, I say loved ones, I change it up. But for terms of this particular scenario, if I have 2 people that I am bringing in to the crematory or I'm dropping them off or, doing a removal, it's just like, I got to get these people where they need to go. Like, I can't be, what would I always say when we got freaked out? No weak bitches.
Yeah.
No weak bitches. Let's go. We got to get this done. And same. Scampering demon or nah, listen, between the faith that I have and the faith that my family has and the ancestors I have watching over me, I'm good. I'm covered. But it still is it doesn't make it less terrifying.
I think at first it's like that shocking
scampering demon.
I'd be scared.
Oh,
I'd be curious. I mean,
absolutely.
I've definitely had that happen before,
Absolutely.
but my mind didn't go to my mind didn't go to demon. I think anything that has to do with like sounds or stuff like that, I'm just not immediately in sheer terror like this person is. I could just be completely desensitized at this point, though.
I definitely, and I will say that sounds that I can't identify immediately will definitely freak me out. That and the sound of children that I can't see. There is nothing more terrifying than hearing a child laugh and knowing there are no children in the
That it,
building.
yeah.
That is
I feel like I
scary.
got so much like, you know, those like prayer boxes? Like, I just got so used to hearing shit all the time that I just became like, any kind of sound where it's like voices, I'm like, oh, it's just so. And I also like worked at a Jewish mortuary where we always had a shomer who was constantly praying. So I'm like, it's like 2 a.m. and I'm hearing shit like, it's just, this is just what comes with it. Like, I don't know whether it's a scampering demon or fucking whatever. No weak bitches.
Yeah. No weak bitches. All right. Well, I have one that's fun that I'm going to
Yeah.
read.
Yeah. Oh, it's not worse than you whispering my name. Creepy.
That was an example.
That was really creepy.
That's the point of ghost stories. Ooh, I hope Milan put some really cool sound effects on that.
Goodness.
All right, y'all. One of my uncles works for the government in Mexico, and he's got a mortician slash coroner friend, and he told us the following story. Now, I want to pause and let you know this story. I did not read it all the way through. It's probably going to be some bullshit because it's already like my uncle's auntie's best friends, homeboys, next door neighbors, post office auntie's worker said that. So,
We'll see.
but we're gonna roll with it. There was a bad shooting between cartels and the local federal police. About 11 dead total. Cops and I'm not saying that word. That sounds like a slur. Cops and cartel members combined. I'm not going to read that word. I'm not sure. You know how you see a slur
I
that's like
gotta see
outside
it.
of your cultural scope of reference? And I'm like, I don't think I can say that, so I'm
Oh
just not
my
going
god.
to. See how you just don't say
Oh
words that
my
aren't for
god.
you?
Go on.
I'm not looking at you, Alexis. I'm looking
Oh,
at the
I know.
imaginary people watching. The cartel sent a message that they wanted the bodies, or else. That's in quotes. So they were brought to the friend mortician to hold and process. They told him that there would be an officer on guard outside, and after a very long day that turned into night, he noticed that the guard was just standing outside of the door in the hallway. Think double doors with rectangle windows, where the other bodies were being held as there was no space. And that was weird, since he didn't have a view of the outside from that location. He made enough space to fit the rest of the bodies in the cooler, though a little tight. He went to open the door and greeted the officer outside the door, but he was gone. 1 second there and then gone. He chucked it off to tiredness and continued on. He walks outside to head home and noticed a patrol car parked in front. So he walked over and said, "Hey, why'd you come outside all of a sudden? I thought you were keeping an eye on me." And the man said, "Sir, I've been outside all day long. Was there someone else inside?" So they both ran in to see who was standing there, and there was nobody in the hallway. They went to the cooler, and they opened the cooler doors, and they were shocked to see that the upper half of the squad commander standing at guard over the dead. From the waist up only, military pose, chin up. He lost his life leading the men and was guarding them afterwards. They say he disappeared slowly in front of their eyes. This is bullshit. He mentioned that every now and then, when they bring in victims of sudden death, he can feel the presence of someone in the room, and he believes it's the energy of the deceased trying to figure out what happened. That seems like less bullshit. He reads the report out loud and usually makes them leave. He also said he loves his job, and these minor inconveniences don't bother him at all, as he considers himself a man of science and thinks there's an answer to this. But as of right now, he just doesn't have it. That was actually pretty well written.
This is the thing. I feel like this story may be a bit exaggerated. I don't know. I'm a little skeptical.
Same. I think he saw somebody. I definitely think he saw somebody. And I definitely think there may have been someone shepherding the spirits of everyone else, their squadron or, I don't know, platoon. I don't know what police officers call that's what I said. I don't know if it's squadron, platoon. I don't know how that works. But, your team, your partners, your whatever, your coworkers. I feel like coworkers is too light of a word, but whatever. If you have that bond and you're looking out for each other and you're leading a team, I can definitely see that energy wanting to lead them out. And I definitely get the vibe, especially when there are deaths that are traumatic or just really, bizarre. You do feel an energy of, and maybe it is. Maybe it's the person trying to figure out what happened. Maybe it's something else. Maybe it's, I don't know. I am not one to say what that spirit, but I will say, I believe he felt something. I believe he saw something. But I also believe in telling that story to his friends, it amps up a little bit.
Yeah, I agree. I think definitely there was someone there. There was a spirit there to some capacity, but I don't know if it is as in-depth as it was described. That's a little much. Yes, I see the smoke.
Do you see the smoke?
It's kind of distracting. I'm like, what is happening?
All right, y'all. I wanted a cool smoky background, but my diffuser wasn't giving the smoke I wanted it to give, so I stuck an incense stick inside of a candle, a Gems Collective candle. GemsCollective.com to get yours. And but now it's working. It's giving me the smoky effect. So anyway, that's it for us today, y'all. We are excited for you to join us for season 1 of Get Stiff coming soon. And we're very excited just for you to go on this journey with us. You can follow the show at Get Stiff Podcast on Instagram. You can follow me on Instagram at I.Do.Death, on TikTok as I.Do.Death. And
oh my God, that I.Do. always just gets... you can find me on Instagram at Death with Lex, and same thing on TikTok, Death with Lex.
If you have questions and you want to talk to us, we want to hear from you. So send us a DM or send us an email at getstiffpodcast@gmail.com. We can't wait to show you guys what we have in store for you. And thank you so much for your time.
Yeah, best
Happy
holiday
Halloween.
ever. Every day is Halloween.
And we out.